Today on the show, we have Ruthie Bowles. She is a mom of four, a U.S. Army vet, and a small business owner. She owns the company Defy The Status Quo, which is also a podcast. She provides content marketing creation and strategy for consulting firms and service companies. Today on the show, she's talking all about backwards planning, how much she made before she quit her corporate job, and where to find some good clients. Oh, and her new book. So let's dive right in. Welcome to the Savvy Scribe Podcast, a podcast for healthcare professionals who want to build a profitable writing business. I'm your host, Janine Kalbach. I'm a wife, mother of two incredible boys, labor and delivery nurse who created my own profitable writing business back in 2015, and I'm ready to share my secrets along the way with some help from some incredible guests. My goal is to help you open up your creative mind with my podcast, courses, and Facebook group, the Savvy Scribe Collective, to help you build your own profitable writing business. So let's take a listen. This star reviewer is Erica. She said, I started listening to the Savvy Scribe podcast over the winter, and I'm thrilled I have found it. Janine's advice is easy to follow and full of actionable tasks for any nurse who wants to keep learning the business of writing. Keep up the good work, Savvy Scribe. Well, no, you keep up the good work, Erica. I really appreciate this review, and thanks for being a star listener today. If you guys want to be a star listener and want your name mentioned on the show, come on over to the podcast app and just leave us a 5-star review. It means so much to me and so much to other listeners because they are able to find the podcast better. Thanks so much. Welcome to the show, Ruthie.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your career journey a little bit into freelance writing, and I might stop you along the way for some questions that our writers might have about your journey, but go ahead and tell us a little about yourself and what you do and how you got there.
Okay, so my name is Ruthie Bowles, and I am now a B2B content specialist or consultant, if you will. I started out in the Army. I joined the Army right out of high school, and I served for about 8.5 years. I was a translator, and due to some family life circumstances, nothing dire, but life circumstances nonetheless, I ended up getting out of the Army sooner than I'd planned, and we moved to Maryland, and I was a stay-at-home mom for a while. And then I became a federal contractor, and I found out that I actually did not enjoy the same job without all of the Army things attached to it, which if there are any veterans listening, they'll probably chuckle a little bit because the whole time you're active duty, you're like, oh, if I could just sit here and do my job instead of the military asking me to do all this extra stuff, I'd get so much done. And it just turned out that I actually apparently enjoyed all that extra stuff. And so I was a federal contractor. I wasn't happy with my company. I wasn't super happy with the environment, and I had actually just restarted my pursuit of a bachelor's degree. And I figured, you know what, why not pick something I enjoy? So I picked creative writing. And the more courses I took, the more I started to think, well, what if I could get a job writing? Like, what would that look like? That'd be kind of cool. So just to set the stage here, I have absolutely no background in marketing. Well, I do now, right? I've grown it over the last few years. But when I started, I had no background in marketing. I was like, yeah, I'm a good writer. Woo. And I had nothing, no professional network in that realm or anything. And so I just started freelance writing on the side, for pennies. I used Upwork, and that was how I got started because, like I said, I had no professional network whatsoever. And I've got, 4 kids, and we moved into a new house a couple years after we got to Maryland in 2017. And 6 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant with my 4th child.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, so I was like, and that was when the idea was planted. I was like, what if I went on maternity leave and just didn't come back? And that is basically what happened. I built up my client base from nothing to a good part-time to I was at a really good part-time base about a month before she was due, or about 6 weeks before she was due. And then I had her April 20th in 2018. And by July of 2018, I was comfortable. I was like, okay, this is full time. This is what full time looks like. I only took 2 weeks off of everything after I had her. My clients at the time didn't even know I was pregnant because I was afraid to tell them for fear of, some
Losing them.
un- unconscious bias, right? Oh, she's
Yes.
pregnant. She's going to be so busy and she'll be tired. Let's not hire her, even though she sounds good. And I'm like, look, I deployed to Afghanistan. Like, I was a soldier for 8.5 years. Like, don't count me out just because, I'm having a baby. So
Right.
that's why I kept it a secret. And so it was
So then
funny.
they had no idea that you had a baby.
Right, they had
Be
no
right
idea
back.
I had a baby, and it just so happened that they like that one of my main clients was going on vacation anyway, so like my 2 weeks kind of lined up with theirs, so things were just kind of quiet.
Nice.
And by the time she was 3 months old, somebody said something, and they're like, "Oh, Ruthie's got like 3 kids." We were in a meeting, and I was like, "Yeah, four." But the CEO, also a mom, she was like, "No, you had 3 kids." I was like, "Oh, about that." And that
What'd
is
they
how they
say?
found out I had a whole nother baby. And she could not get over it. She still brings it up because I go to their holiday party because they happen to be here in Maryland where I'm at. So I'll go to their holiday party every year,
Oh,
and they will
funny.
still bring it up. Like,
There's the
Ruthie had a
secret
whole
pregnant lady.
baby. Yes, exactly. Ruthie, you got one in there now. And I'm like, no, we're done.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So, how old are your kids?
My oldest is 8, and then 5.5 and 4, and those are my 3 boys. And then my fourth, she is 2
Got your
now,
princess.
and she is the girl.
I love
Yes.
it. Love it. So, I think, what you've done, I mean, in your lifespan so far is short from amazing. I mean, as deploying, I mean, thank you for your service. That is just incredible. As a woman, too, I think that is just so cool. And then coming back, having a bunch of kids, you know,
Yeah.
life is turned upside down, hating your job in a sense, and now saying, you know what, I don't need this. I can do this instead, and really just making it your own. That is amazing. Congrats to you. That is so cool.
Thank you.
And I know
Thank
my
you.
listeners are thinking the same thing because that is just awesome. So, you got your client base started. Were you making like enough money to support these 4 kids and, support your business and then not working yourself to death, like trying to be a good mom too?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm lucky in that like I'm not a single mom,
Sure.
right? And so what I did was, as I calculated, okay, this is when I would quit my job and I wouldn't get, my 6 weeks disability, because at least that's how my company did it. I got 6 weeks of disability after I had my daughter, and then I had another 6 weeks unpaid. So what I did is I plotted out to that date, and then I did something called backwards planning, which that's what we
Mm-hmm.
call it in the Army. I did something called backwards planning, and I calculated my milestones in terms of what I would have to earn to cover my childcare costs, and then taxes and business expenses, right? So that would have been my very base, and then anything on top of that gets divvied up into the appropriate accounts. And that was really the big thing, because I only went back to work because we decided to buy a house here in Maryland. And wow, property costs here are super high. And so I went back to work because I was in military intelligence. So with my security clearance, I was able to get a job that allowed me to pay for childcare on my paycheck, in addition to us being able to save up for costs and things associated with home buying. So that was really the only reason I went back to work in the first place. So in order for me to feel comfortable, hey, I still have this like full client workload now that I've transitioned, I needed to be able to cover my childcare costs, and that was like the priority. So I got to like mid 4-figure months by the time I quit.
Nice, nice. And that's
Yeah.
helpful. I
So, like, it
mean,
wasn't as much as my paycheck, but I was way happier. And my husband started saving vacation time. So there were additional non-monetary benefits because my husband wasn't taking as much time off because I took the kids to their doctor's appointments and
sure.
I, went to the school events because they always make it right in the middle of the day. And the way our situation is set up, we're pretty spread out here. And where my husband works, parking is awful. Like if you show up after 8 a.m., you're going to be walking or taking a tram in from a far parking garage to get it. It'll take you like 20 minutes to get to your desk. So he has to be at work early and tries not to leave, right? So
Exactly. So was your
there were a lot of
husband like,
non-monetary benefits as
well,
well.
first, like being pregnant with your fourth kid, it's not like that's a walk in the park. Let's be honest. Like you
No,
had to be,
no.
nauseous or tired or all the above.
Yes.
Plus, you're running after three boys. Like that's crazy. And but you had that motivation of, I hate my job. I need to leave. I
Yeah,
want
and
to
and
be home.
it was more like yes, I wasn't super happy with my job, but to be honest, up until like the creative writing planted that seed where I might be able to do something else, I might have enough talent to do something else. I really did believe that I was going to work for the government in some capacity as a translator for the rest of my working life. Like that
Sure.
is what I was very good at it. And
Absolutely.
so yeah, so I thought that that was what I was going to do. So it was more like once the idea happened and I was more unhappy the longer I kind of resisted the idea, it was more like I have sacrificed and done too many things in my life already.
Hmm.
I deserve whatever happiness I can find. And it wasn't that I was crazy unhappy, but like, why don't I deserve to be happier? Like, is there something saying I can't
Absolutely.
be happier? So that was what I wanted to find out. And
So,
that was really the thing. I deserve to be happier, so I'm gonna take my
absolutely.
shot.
Was your husband like really supportive? Like, oh, okay, just don't go back to work and try this business thing. Oh, it'll be fine. Sure. I
Okay,
think
I'm gonna be
spouses are,
honest.
yeah, spouses are a little hesitant, especially with the online work because they're like, what are you doing? Like, I don't really know what you're doing.
Right. Okay. So I will be honest because I did put it. So we talked a little bit about it, but I put it in my book. It was a little bit of a thing between my husband and I.
Uh-huh.
Not gonna lie. He is incredibly supportive now, but it's hard when your significant other is coming from a space of not even close to comprehending things. And it wasn't that he thought I couldn't do it, but he was like, what do you mean you're going to write somebody's blog post or their website content? He's like, people pay for that?
Mm-hmm. You're like,
Like
I know, they do.
yes, and that's exactly it. And that's what made it hard because I only just recently realized that people actually pay good money for that. So his surprise wasn't a surprise, right? Like because
Sure.
he's like, it's not that I don't think you can do it. He's like, I just struggle to believe that there are people out there who make a living, like a whole living doing it. And I'm like, no,
Right.
there is, there is. There's like people that make over 100 grand. And he's
And
like,
I'm gonna
you
do
make a
it.
100 grand right now. And I'm like, it's not about the money though. And he's like, you just brought up money.
Well, you don't want to say it's all about the money, but if you're working a job that could afford childcare and life, mortgage, whatever, it kind of is about the money in a sense. Like you have to live, like or
Yeah,
you
like I
know,
can't ignore
you
it.
started on Upwork. I was over there when I first started out. You do get paid pennies, and
Yes.
at first you're like, well, I'm not making a living, so that's cool. Like I just made money. But when you do have to change that mindset to, no, I need to make a living. Like your mindset from just making a little extra cash to I got to pay my electric is a whole different ball game in a
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, actually that was how I started to frame it. So my very first job on Upwork, and just being completely transparent here, my very first job on Upwork was $10 for 500-word blog post.
Hmm.
Like I am not kidding. Like that is I'm not exaggerating. That is where it was.
No, and that's
So,
funny you say that. That was like my journey too. Like I was like, because I think I was testing the waters. Like, wait, people
yep.
actually do pay money. So
Yeah,
it didn't matter how much money. It was,
that there
wow,
was money.
there's money. And then
Yeah.
people like, because I honestly, this is just funny to talk about now. I didn't even know what freelance writing was. I was just like, okay, well, And then you hear like, the term like the starving artist, the starving writer. Like
Yeah.
I always thought
Yeah.
writers were just these people in this like closet office with their like pen and piece of paper, and then they hopefully sold something one day. Like that was my thought
Hmm.
process behind a writer, but it's not, especially these days with web content and blogs and whatnot. Like,
Absolutely.
so yeah, it's funny. Your unconventional journey is pretty conventional with mine. Like it's about the
Good.
same.
Yeah,
It's
because
fine.
that's the truth right there. And I mean, so I have found that type of client on Upwork, of course, but my goal was just to always get a job that paid a little bit more. And then I started framing it within the context of my bills. So I would look at an opportunity and be like, okay, well, when I go to the grocery store or my husband goes and we buy for our family, we go about every 2 weeks and we spend $300 to $400. So I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, is this a grocery shopping trip? Like, how much, if it's more than that, how many grocery shopping trips are we talking here? And
Sure.
if it's less than a grocery shopping trip, it better be like super easy. It needs to be like a test job or something.
This episode is brought to you by my very own course, Plan, Create, Launch, Land, and Grow Your Health Writing Business. Inside this course, you will find the complete roadmap from knowing nothing about freelance writing to launching your very own profitable health writing business. With 45 plus lessons and an opportunity to earn CEUs, why wouldn't you try it out to escape that bedside burnout? If you want to start a new PRN job instead of picking up more and more hours extra at the bedside job, join me and plenty of other nurses by going to www.thesavvyscribepodcast.com and click on courses. Back to the show.
If you've been on my email list for more than 6 months, you might have noticed in the last 6 months that my newsletters have started to look a lot cooler than they used to. It's not because I've become a graphic designer overnight. It's all because of a cool new tool called Flowdesk. If you need a 50% off code for your email list to look a lot cooler than it does now, head on over to thesavvyscribepodcast.com/FLODESK, Flowdesk.
But I went from finding super low budget clients to finding people who were willing to pay me even more than $100 an hour, internal calculated type rate.
Absolutely.
So they're there. You just have to know how to find them and connect with them. And that's like a whole thing. But that was why I started there, because I had no network. I was employed. So I didn't want to, network during the day or even in the evening because I have my family, once I'm not at work. So Upwork was the easiest way for me to take that, to take that chance. Because I couldn't even really do social media yet because I didn't want to announce to everybody that I was looking for alternative work.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit, like, so you were on Upwork and then
Mm-hmm.
you made your $10. Did you stay on Upwork when you started getting more clients?
Yeah, I did. I stayed on Upwork. I think I got almost all of my clients exclusively from Upwork for like almost a year.
Nice.
Well into when I quit, like, when I quit my job and everything. And I started looking at, okay, I've had several clients now. I've got a nice portfolio. I'm getting uh, professional rates. Let's look at what I can do outside of Upwork now. I'm in Maryland. I'm right in between Baltimore and DC and Annapolis. So there's lots of companies here, big companies. What can I do? So I started going to events. I changed my LinkedIn profile to reflect that I was now self employed, and, I started networking and building my network there. And that was when I started to really feel like a real professional. I got to be honest. I was outside of the bubble, the protective bubble in its own way of Upwork, right? Like I have
Sure,
to
you
send
have your,
invoices. There
yep.
is no payment protection. I can't just flag a bad a bad client and get them kicked off or anything. Like I'm out in the real world now. And so that was kind of how I made the transition. I was like, okay, I've been comfortable. This is nice. But I actually found the one client who found out I had had a baby. I found them on Upwork. It was just a complete fluke that they were actually here in Maryland.
Oh yeah, that's pretty cool though, to have a local
Yeah,
client.
yeah.
That's
And so
really
that's
cool.
one of the things I was able to say is like, oh, well, I work with this company here. But it also sounded nice introducing myself locally when I say, oh, well, I've had clients, international clients. I've got clients in Chicago and clients in Washington and Los Angeles. And so I was able to kind of list those things off. So Upwork gave me the opportunity to connect with people I probably wouldn't have connected with at all.
Absolutely. And that's to say, like, you hear so many bad things about Upwork, but it's the way you use it, honestly. And
Absolutely.
and
It's just like anything else though, because I
truly
could go on LinkedIn right now and find somebody who's like, yeah, we pay $50 for 1,000 words.
sure, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, when you do go off on your own and you're like, okay, now I have to do the invoicing and da da da. If you're doing the rates that you deserve as a nurse or as an experienced writer like Ruthie, you're not going to get bad clients because they have budgets. They have like corporate, like it's more of a, you usually don't get like scammed in that sort of industry. Plus contracts, contracts bind you with that. And,
Yeah.
I always say every client get a contract so that you're never looking for their
Oh, and I
payment
got
or
rid of a
bugging them.
lot of people, at least even people who are slow or maybe non-committal. I always ask for 50% up front or all of it up front, depending on the nature of the contract. And so anybody who's not willing to pay a portion up front is probably going to try and ghost you. So
Absolutely.
yeah. So once I started getting 50% up front, that is trust on their end. And then I trust them, right, to pay the rest once the project is over or we come to an interval where it's time for payment. So that was another big thing that I did that I felt kind of boosted my professionalism, because depending on the length of a content project, you may be working on something for a whole month, putting in hours and hours and hours. And then the client's like, oh, well, our payment cycle is 30 days or 60
Yes.
days or something. And you're like, my bills aren't on a 60-day cycle. So
I
I need
hate
you to
that.
pay
I
me.
know.
Yeah. So getting them to pay you 50% up front, then that kind of helps eliminate some of those issues. And once I started doing that, unless it's stipulated in my contract that I'm willing to wait 60 days for you to pay me, like you need to pay me. Oh, and I also put that the copyright for the content transfers to my client once the final invoice has been paid. So
there
if
you go.
push really comes to shove, like it's stipulated right there in the signed agreement that you don't own that copyright to use it.
That's a good point. A good point. Now, you have something really cool coming out here soon called a book. No.
Yes.
What? Now when this episode airs, it may be out, it may be closer to being published, but let's tell my audience here what it is, because it's definitely something they would be interested in. What's the title?
So the title is Freelance Content Writer's Journey from Side Hustle to Self-Employed.
And
so it's, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
All right. So I wrote it because I come across it too often in Facebook groups and pretty much everywhere online, where we like kind of talked about how people bash Upwork, and you've got, more experienced, or I guess I don't want to say more experienced. I want to say people who've been in the content writing industry longer telling you, oh, this is the way you're supposed to do it. This is the way that it's done. And I feel like at almost every single turn, I have done it my own way,
And it's worked.
Right. And it did not take me 10 years to get to the rates that I have, right? I don't work 40-hour weeks. I work like maybe 20. 25, including my own business development and my own content marketing and things, those internal costs. That's where I like it. But I wrote the book because I wanted to put something out there that was easy to grab or easy to buy, like on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or something, where people could grab it and say, okay, this is how someone else did it, and they are successful. So it's not meant to be like, hey, you need to do it like me, but it was just, hey, here is another way to do it. And that is why I wrote it. Because when I first got interested, that's what I looked to. I looked towards books and looking at things online. And I realized that more people might also shoot their shot if they realize that it doesn't have to take you years and years and years to get rates that make it through a grocery shopping trip,
Absolutely.
And I actually met my publisher at a conference in DC It was just a women's conference, and I was networking, and I met her. I told her a little bit about it because I was just planning on self-publishing, and they're like, "Oh, nope, that sounds really good." And this was well before COVID and quarantine and everything, and now more people are looking at freelancing. So I guess it's going to end up being pretty timely.
Yeah,
Thankfully.
absolutely. And I think it's not only just timely, but timeless. I think years from now, people will still go to this book to see how you did it. That's why I bring a lot of guests on this show and my first question is always tell me how you got started because someone's going to resonate with you. Like Ruthie's like, my journey's very different than other people's, but then we found out like mine's kind of different too, but we made our own way and, you make it through the sea of how to do it. And because there isn't a guide out there. There is, but there isn't. Like there's one time my oldest, I'm like having trouble with our youngest child and I'm like, listen, Zach, there's no book on parenting. Like you just have to know how to do it. And nobody tells you the way. He goes, well, actually there is, Mom. There's like a lot of books at the library you can look up for parenting. No, knock it off. Like seriously.
Yeah, right. You're like, well, none of those resonate.
None of those are my experience, okay? But truly, like there is a little bit of a roadmap out there, but everybody's situation is different. Everybody wants something out of it. You may want to be self-employed. You may want to keep it a side hustle. You may want to maybe join a company and work as a writer with them. It's really whatever you want out of it. But you can create your own destiny in a sense. And I think everybody needs to know that. And I think your book is really going to help with that.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get it out there.
Absolutely. Oh, you're going to love it. You're going to love it in your hands and be able to like show everybody you did it. That's so cool. So tell us, where can we find you on social and connect with you if my listeners want to?
So LinkedIn is probably my favorite platform. And if you search for me, just Ruthie Bowles, Bowles, you'll find me there. And then my website is defythestatusquo.com. And
That's a cool website.
Thank you. Yes. Because, and this is pretty much my tagline, but because the status quo is mediocre content and I won't let you do it.
I love that. Oh, good.
Yeah. So, and I work with primarily B2B consulting firms. And so their content can tend towards the boring or overly unnecessarily professional, like stiff and boring. So that is what I help shake them out of. And so Defy the Status Quo Biz on Instagram and Facebook, Defy the Status Quo. And then on Twitter, I'm actually Anna Ruthus, ANNARUTHUS. I've had that Twitter account for a really long time.
I love it. So, who are some of your clients with the B2B? Just curious if you're allowed to say.
Oh, yeah, sure. So the one client I was talking about here in Maryland, that's OST Global Solutions. They're a federal business development company. I am also working with AJ Rao LLC, which is a diversity, equity, and inclusion consulting firm. I've partnered with a company called Quick to Impress, which is a digital marketing, like growth marketing company. And so I'm working with them on a few of their clients' content.
Cool.
Yes, it's been a few. I had a few kind of be like, hey, we need to like regroup for coronavirus. So I've had some paid advertising companies, consulting firms that I've worked with, and supply chain actually is a big one that I work with as well. But I've been able to find new clients during quarantine while some other clients are like, hey, we're going to have to pause. So it's worked out well because I figure what's going to happen is once everything norms out, those clients will come back and, go back to, okay, we understand what our digital marketing strategy needs to be and we understand where our budgets need to be. Because, by the numbers, more companies are spending more on content and digital marketing. So it bodes well for us as writers.
Absolutely. And I like, the reason I ask that is because I think a lot of nurses we do mostly the B2C, but just so you guys can look up Ruthie and the company she writes for, just to be curious of how her style is and how to write for B2B. Well, I really appreciate you, Ruthie, coming on the show today. And, thanks for connecting. And you guys go connect with Ruthie over on social, go to her website, just kind of check things out. I think it's really incredible what you're doing out there. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, take care and good luck with your book coming out. Excited for you. Take care.